Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to introduce themselves and tell you why they want to represent you. Second is Birkenhead concerns. Each candidate will be given 5 minutes to outline what they think the most important issues are for us and what they will do about them. Thirdly, closing statements. So each candidate will have 1 minute to state 3 reasons why the people of the Northcote electorate should vote for them. And lastly, a Q&A session. So as mentioned, if you can enter your question into the chat, we should have a time for about 3 to 4 questions, and each candidate will be given the option to give a 1 minute response. We have 2 administrators looking for the common themes and read out relevant questions for you all. They will be monitoring the incoming questions to ensure they're only coming via the chat, so please utilize that function. We're aiming to be wrapped up by about 8:15 this evening, but feel free to log out earlier if you need to. So without further ado, it's my pleasure in introducing in alphabetical order by first name, our Northcote electorate candidates this evening. Bill Dyatt for New Conservative, Dan Boudoir and our current MP for National, Natasha Fairley for the Greens, Shanan Halbert for Labour, Tim Cromfeld for ACT. So we'll start off with the first section of the candidate introductions. Bill, we're going to start with you this evening.
Good, thank you. And with great frustration because my video isn't working and I've got myself all set up and dressed really nicely for this. So anyway, a quick 2-minute introduction, no time for jokes or funny stories. I'm Bill Dyatt, your candidate for New Conservative, and this is the first time I've stood as a candidate for a political party, mainly because of the new abortion bill, which I think is totally barbaric, but also to provoke some open debate around topics that the news media would have you believe are already settled. For instance, climate change is now being driven by a global political agenda rather than actual scientific facts. Bad science is being used to promote bad policies. For instance, the government wants to reduce methane emissions by taxing farm animals through the emissions trading scheme from 2025 onwards because they think these methane emissions contribute to greenhouse gases. They don't. Cattle and sheep produce the methane by eating grass, which has already taken CO2 from the atmosphere, not out of the ground, unlike fossil fuels. So it's actually a carbon neutral cycle, exactly the same as forestry, and it should be left alone. We won't let bad science ruin our farming sector. So the main thing for us is freedom. Freedom can only come to a thriving middle class, and only a capitalist free market system can deliver this. So for our economic policy, $10 billion in tax cuts to stimulate economic growth. The first $20,000 you earn, you get to keep tax-free. We would pull New Zealand out of the emissions trading scheme, which costs us $3.1 billion every year. We would ditch the plan to plant 1 billion trees for carbon credits, which will only ruin productive farmland. We would repeal the zero carbon bill and pull out of the Paris Accord on climate change. New Conservative is all about protecting property rights and free market. Oh, and I'm time up. Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Nearly got there.
You nearly got there.
Nearly got there. Thank you.
We'll hear from you again soon.
Shut up now.
Okay, so our next introduction, thank you, Bill. Our next introduction is Dan Boudoir. Dan.
Thank you, Sarah. And I just want to start up by welcoming you all here today and saying a big thank you to Jenny and all the team at Rotary Birkenhead, and also to Gillian and all the team at the Birkenhead Residents Association. One of the privileges of this job is getting to see the great work that you guys do for our community. So I just want to acknowledge the special contribution that you make to enhancing our environment. So I'm standing for re-election as your local MP after a short stint of 2 years in the role. I live here in Birkenhead, in fact on Oniwa Road with my fiance Courtney, who I believe is logged into the call tonight. And I'm very, very passionate about this place. But let me tell you, I think actually all candidates standing tonight are in fact passionate about Birkenhead and improving this environment. But it's not enough to be a good local MP. In my experience, what you need to be a good local MP is somebody who's experienced and qualified for the role, first and foremost. Somebody that works hard for you and standing up for you and the issues that matter to you. And thirdly, someone who I think reflects the values of this community. And with me, you're getting someone who's stood up for you, whether it's on things like Little Shoal Bay, freedom camping, transport, the Northcote Point ferry terminal. I've stood up for you time and time again, and will continue to do so. I'm also an experienced candidate. I have a degree from Harvard University in public policy. Prior to coming into politics, I have a successful career in business. And can relate to a lot of the electorate in that respect. And I think my values represent the values of our community as well. Values of hard work, values of private enterprise, values of education, but also finally values of, I think, protecting our environment as well as strengthening our economy. And I think there's a lot of people in our community that want to see both achieved. So I really appreciate not only your electorate votes at this election, but I need your party vote to ensure that National is strong. So I really appreciate your support, and thank you very much for joining the call tonight.
Thanks, Dan. Great, thank you. Okay, so Natasha for the Greens.
Thanks, Sarah. Kia ora koutou. Good evening, everyone. I'm Natasha Fairley, and I'm the Green Party candidate for the Northcote electorate. Tonight, I hope to share with you a few of the key Green policies and also to encourage you to use your party vote for the Green Party this election. A little bit about myself. I went to Northcote College with my brother and sister, and now I'm a family lawyer based in Ponsonby. My grandmother lived in state housing in Northcote Central for about 50-ish years and then moved to Birkenhead, and she was there until she passed away last year. And my mother also grew up in Northcote Central. I've spent a lot of time in Northcote, and I think it's a vibrant, amazing electorate. Geographically, it's beautiful. It's got amazing coasts and pockets of bush, and it's got a really vibrant multicultural community with some of the best food, I believe, down in Northcote Central. So why am I standing for the Greens? Well, I love nature. I go camping, tramping, spending time in regional and national parks. And more locally, I love going for walks with my dog at Takapuna and St. Leonard's. And I guess over the last few years, I've kind of become more involved with forest and bird, and I started learning and witnessing the environment that I really love, and I believe lots of New Zealanders love, including all of you in Birkenhead, and slowly realising it was deteriorating, and we needed a government that saw this too and wasn't afraid to act. So I looked into different political parties, and I discovered the Green Party best aligned with these values. But enough about me, as I'm asking you to party vote Green. As the Greens are currently a much smaller party than Labour and National, if you want any Green voice in the government, you need to party vote Green. So what is a Green voice? It's a voice that thinks ahead. It's a voice for those that cannot vote and cannot lobby their interests with donations. It's a voice for our environment. It's a voice for our future generations that although they cannot vote now, they are going to be severely impacted by the choices we make this coming election. It's also a voice for us New Zealanders, including you and I, to be able to enjoy and thrive in New Zealand currently. With better housing, we need better healthcare, better transport, and cleaner, healthier environments. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Natasha. Okay, Shannon, on to you.
Tēnā rau atu kia koutou katoa. He mihi kawanu anu ki ngā kai tuao, ngā kai mahi o tēnei rohe, tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings everyone, my name is Shanan Halbert and I'm standing to be your local MP in this election. I'm incredibly connected to this local community. I've lived here and bought my first house here for over 10 years now, alongside my partner and my 65 kilo German Shepherd named Awatea. I'm very, very proud of this community and the work that we do together, both in the not-for-profit sector, but also amongst our retail and small businesses. I'm obviously also proud of the work that our Prime Minister has done in leading a stable government throughout the past 3 years, and particularly I want to acknowledge tonight COVID-19 and the impact on our lives and our inability to meet face-to-face in what we normally do in true Birkenhead style throughout the election period. I'm standing because I've demonstrated to you over a number of years and consecutive elections my commitment to this community as a leader, as a young Māori man, and as a person within this community to be a part of Jacinda Ardern's government, to continue her work and ensure that we have adequate representation as a part of the next government, that we continue to rebuild together. And the value that I stand for is kotahitanga, and that's something that's important to the leadership that I'll demonstrate as our local MP, bringing everyone together, no matter what political party that we're a part of, working with our council and ensure that we're getting the job done. I believe the role of a local MP and what I'll bring to the role is ensuring that I'm focused on central government matters, acquiring the resource, expertise and support that our community desperately needs. Nō reira, tēnā koutou.
Oh, thanks, Shannon. Okay, Tim, we'll go on to you now, please.
Good evening, Northcote. Can you hear me? I moved to Auckland and bought a house on Ottawa Road in 1986. I've got 3 adult children and 3 teenage boys, and this is my 4th stint at, actually 5th. I stood at East Coast Bays in 2008 and we were instrumental in getting the key government on board at that time. This election I see is now going to be hugely important given the 140 billion of borrowing we've undertaken to keep the economy afloat. Everyone can have their own views on how this money has been spent and where, and the process once we get the other side of COVID is how we're going to manage our way out of this. The 2 main parties' policies are to keep spending and borrowing. ACT is purely we're a conservative party. We're a solutions-based public policy is our focus, and behind that the main idea is a reducing role of government and an increasing role for the individual and free markets. We recently announced a tax cut to the middle part of New Zealand. It's going to be the individual and the business owner and the private sector that will pull us out of this recession. So we need to prioritise that part of the economy, which is probably 80% of the market, and a $2,000 permanent tax cut in that middle bracket will be an important role and part in achieving this plan to manage a way out of this. We've got.
Okay,
again,
that's your time, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to cut you off there. You will have another opportunity to speak a bit further shortly. Okay, thanks everyone. That's really great to get to know you a little bit better. The second portion now is about Birkenhead concerns. So just a reminder to everyone, this is where the candidates will tell us what they think the most important issues are for us and what they will do about them. So again, we're just going to go in the same order, starting with you, please, Bill.
Sure, thanks for that. So what can we do for Birkenhead, New Conservative? Well, I've picked out 3 key things, although there's a lot of things, of course, that New Conservative could do. But here they are. Number 1, crime and poverty. Over the longer term, New Conservative can reduce crime, poverty, drug dependence and youth suicide by promoting good moral values and the traditional family unit, which is mum, dad and the kids, because broken homes do not provide the same level of support for children as the family can, and broken homes are a cause of much of the hardship in our society. So we'll do all we can to protect and promote the family home, including the sanctity of marriage. And it's so important to our society that we build strong families. No government department, no amount of taxpayer funding can ever replace a family. Number 2, we would return democracy to the people, to you, the people. The New Zealand government is to some extent ignoring its people, I have to say. An example is the 2020 abortion bill. More than 90% of public submissions opposed the bill, and almost 95% of those who wanted to speak to the abortion committee were denied the opportunity. Independent polling found that only 4% of New Zealanders wanted more liberal abortion, and yet the government pushed it through anyway. So Justice Minister Andrew Little then tried to say that it was stupid stuff and it would be sad if anybody believed there was any such thing as full-term abortion. And yet that's exactly what the new law allows. So why write a bill that is against what New Zealanders want and then try to pretend it says something else? Here's why. In November last year, the UN Human Rights Committee published a statement which promoted more access to abortion, including abortion no longer being considered a crime. So you see, we're slowly developing a more globalist government in New Zealand who are more interested in their reputation with the UN than actually representing the desires of New Zealanders. And I'm not saying that that's extreme, that's only sort of going in that direction, and we want to turn that around. So New Conservative would decouple New Zealand from the UN and its own attempts to impose its undemocratic agenda onto us. And you, the voters, will get to decide our policies, not an unelected group of bureaucrats on the other side of the world. And in line with that, New Conservative supports binding citizens-initiated referendums to change bad government policies mid-term. So to trigger a referendum would require a petition of 5% of the voters that were in the last general election, and then to become binding on the government would require a 2/3 majority vote. And finally, just for the people of Birkenhead, we would devolve the Auckland super city gradually over time back into regional borough councils, giving more local accountability for council decisions and also removing the ability of certain pressure groups to impose their agendas onto everyone else. So what we're about really is the opposite of globalism. We want to bring control back to the people, to the voters, to a more local level, both internationally and locally, because we believe there's more freedom in that. If I've got time, the Harbour Bridge and traffic. So New Conservative offers a innovative Kiwi engineering solution to the traffic congestion, and this is called SkyCab. SkyCab's a New Zealand company that can provide a cost-effective electric monorail system. We'd build a monorail loop from the CBD across the Harbour Bridge both ways, and the monorail loop would go all the way up to Albany, returning along Glenfield Road and Oneway Road, and I don't know if you can see that, but you get the idea. It goes over the bridge and does a loop, comes back. Each cab could take up to 16 people, and including bikes. And the cabs hang below a rail, which is up on poles. So the ground footprint is very small, and the installation cost is quite low. The cost for the entire Northern Loop, including both ways across the bridge, would be $1.4 billion with a B, but only 400 million of that would come from the government, and the rest would come from private investment, because SkyCab would be profitable on a standard bus fare. So 400 million to the taxpayer. Now, because the cabs can also carry bikes, the proposed $320 million Sky Path, which is a footpath across the Harbour Bridge, effectively, or a very fancy one, would no longer be required. So now the taxpayer cost is only $80 million more than Sky Path, and you get a complete monorail system for the whole North Shore region. And if it's raining, I'm sure most people would prefer Sky Cab to Sky Path, particularly elderly people and disabled people who are unable to use Sky Path. Time's up.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you, Bill. And it's great you got your camera going, that we can see you there. So that's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Old people are not very good with technology. I had some using the camera at the same time. So
no, you're doing great.
Thank you.
Okay, Dan, we'd like to hear from you about your Birkenhead and Northcote concerns.
Excellent. So I've chosen 3 issues to talk about in the, I guess we'll call it COVID era. And I think these 3 issues can be applied across Auckland, but I think they're also unique, and I'll talk about the unique Birkenhead flavour. The first issue is rebuilding our economy, in particular for Birkenhead, that's about Birkenhead Village. The second issue I'll talk about is enhancing our environment, and with the Birkenhead focus, it's going to be on Little Shoal Bay. And on the third issue that I think is relevant for all Aucklanders is around transport, and for us, transport is a significant issue. So let me go into each for you a little bit there. The first is around rebuilding Birkenhead Village. I just took a walk up to Birkenhead yesterday. There were 16 vacant retail shops in Birkenhead alone. Treasury forecasts indicate that there's going to be a significant more amount of businesses that will close, people unemployed over the next year. So I think the harsh reality is that in the COVID environment, we're going to see a lot of our small businesses up in Birkenhead, but also around our Birkenhead community suffer. So what is the solution for that? Well, firstly, what I'll tell you what we won't do, we won't put a whole lot of cost increases like this government is proposing for small businesses. I've had a lot of negative feedback, and I've heard the Labour candidate get that same feedback too, around the increase in public holidays, more sick leave, minimum wage going up unsustainably. The feedback from businesses is that they just can't take it. So unfortunately, if things don't change on the cost front, many small businesses are going to struggle. What we need to do absolutely from a countrywide level is encourage whatever we can for people to start a business. And I met some people locally who were laid off during lockdown, and they've gone out and set up their own businesses. And I say kudos to them. We need to encourage that. And that's why National has offered incentives for people who start a company. And we also need, of course, incentives for people who already have a company but want to hire new staff. So that's why we've got an incentive of $10,000 per worker for that. I think as your local MP, what I'm really passionate about is seeing the vision of Birkenhead thrive. And I think what that looks like from a local perspective is, yes, we absolutely need a new tenant for the warehouse that's vacated. I'm working with the property managers and the owners to see what they're looking at doing, and I think they've got some aspirations, which is really positive. There's a building next to where Courtney and I live on the corner of Oniwa Road and Birkenhead Ave. I think there's huge potential there. So there's a lot to do, but you need an MP that actually has been in the business world and can relate to what it's like to start and grow and manage a business. The second issue is around preserving our environment. And I think, Kyle, you're on the call. Kyle is a passionate local who wants to see Little Shoal Bay improved, and I do too. And I think kudos to John and Adrian, and I'm sure many others who are really passionate about this. I want to be very clear, and I haven't made this clear because I've been listening to a lot of your concerns. I think the solution for Little Shoal Bay is to develop a strategic plan with council for the preservation of Little Shoal Bay in the foreseeable future. And that has to mean actually some serious investment coming from council to help get that underway. So I'm really passionate about actually adding weight to the community efforts to make sure that that happens, because I just think Little Shoal Bay is a fantastic park and space for our community, and a place where Courtney and I certainly love to go down as well. And the third and final thing is transport. And you'll know that I've made a big thing about transport. I live on Oniwa Road. I see the transport issues every day. And I think the solution is around actually trialing ideas down Oniwa Road. And we've finally got Auckland Transport to trial a permanent clearway later on this year. It was supposed to happen during lockdown. That's fantastic. I totally agree that we need to get started on the second harbour crossing. National's brought that forward by 10 years to 2028 construction, but I've also got permission from Judith to say that actually we'll get started in our second term construction on that. So I'm really passionate about that. The ferries, I think, are really huge potential. We've got to get that ferry up. And yes, we're committed to SkyPath, but hey, we're going to find ways to cut down that cost, because $400 million of your taxpayer money is just getting too expensive. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Okay, Natasha, we'd like to go on to you now for your Birkenhead and Northcote concerns.
Great, thank you. As we only have a couple of minutes to talk us candidates, I just really wanted to encourage those who are listening to actually go online and do a search, especially for the Green Party. We've got all our policies in really readable formats. So just Google or any other search, Green Party policy, and you'll come up, and I think that's the best way to get informed before this election. But a couple of the ones I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight is environment and transport, so similar to National. The Greens, however, I think are a little bit different to National, see ecosystem all really entwined, and you can't really separate out something like Little Shoal Bay without thinking about general water quality and environmental protection standards. So starting with the environment, I'm sure that all of you want to ensure the beautiful coastline that you have here, the bush, streams, the parks, the trees, and make sure these are protected and looked after. These are areas of common benefit to us all for our mental health. They're great for exercising, leisurely activities. They also are aesthetically beautiful and have improved the value of all the areas that they exist in. And they also are very important ecosystems for not only us humans, but all the animals that live in here. Unfortunately, there are not big lobby groups throwing money at environmental issues. So for them to be on the negotiating table, you really need to use your party vote for a party that will fight for them, not because they're getting some money from some other organisation to do so. Really, it's up to us voters to put our money where our mouth is in our votes. We want to ensure that green spaces are protected and good water quality is ensured, and that we care for the environment that we live in, and we just don't take it for granted anymore. A couple of particular urban policies for the Green parties are to improve urban water quality and supply by funding green infrastructure. We want to support home water storage and require new buildings to include grey water recycling. And looking further afield, New Zealand Greens also want to phase down the allocation of water extraction by commercial bottling companies. This is a big issue that's been going on for far too long under previous governments, and the Greens are really dedicated to trying to reduce this as far as possible. We also want to fix curbside recycling and ensure that there's more recycling processing can be done in New Zealand, and this will also create jobs in the industry. Climate change is obviously another urgent area that needs our attention, and it demands urgent action to decarbonise the energy system. We are all aware that we're having to reset the economy after COVID-19, and by doing this at the same time as tackling climate change ensures that our future generations do not have to be left with debt and also dealing with the climate change. Debt and dealing with climate change. So we actually want to create industry, jobs, and be progressive with the way that we spend money looking forward, not doing the same practices now that are causing problems and just leaving them for future generations. The Greens, to help do this, want to equip all suitable public housing with solar panels and batteries. They want to make it 50% cheaper for everyone to upgrade to solar batteries for their own homes with government finance. We want to ban new offshore oil permits, and there's many other environmental reasons why, if you value these things, you want to party vote Green. I'll just move on to transport for the last couple of minutes. I think we can all agree that our transport needs to change and that we should really already have a better public transport system. The Greens believe the only railway transport is going to get better, despite our increasing population and higher density living, is to focus on more effective, reliable, environmental and affordable public transport. If you look to any developed city around the world, there's always an emphasis on using public transport to get around. It reduces congestion, and as well it minimises the effect of transport on the environment. We need to move away from New Zealand's car-focused transport in the city and surrounding suburbs, including Birkenhead. In Auckland, 47% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from transport, and this is why decarbonising our transport system is really important to one of our responses to climate change and achieving a zero carbon economy, which the Green Party is dedicated to, unlike some of the other parties here. It's going to require some big changes to transport, and the Greens, to help do this, will increase the supply of safe walking and cycling options. It's great to see more and more people getting on e-bikes, as I know New Zealand is quite hilly. Going to increase the supply of reliable and affordable public passenger transport, buses, trains, and as Dan mentioned too, ferries. But it's really important for the Northcote electorate. We want to repair and upgrade our national network as well. I think for the environment and transport, looking forward, the Greens is the best party to ensure that we are looking progressive and moving forward. So party vote Green.
Thanks, Natasha. That's lovely. Okay, Shannon, on to you for your concerns for Birkenhead and Northcote.
Thank you. I talked about being incredibly proud of our community, but I'm also incredibly optimistic about our future. And the role of our next local MP for Northcote is somebody that's going to lead us in post-COVID-19 situation and help rebuild our economy and be a part of a team in government to get things done, but also at a local level to ensure that we have an active voice at the decision-making table. I'll start with transport because that's a popular topic of the week, and we've had some toing and froing around that. But it's very, very important to acknowledge the work that, that previous Labour governments have done in investment in infrastructure, but in particular, in 2018, this government, after a very, very long time, was the government that invested in ATAP, which is Auckland Transport Action Plan. In 2018, $1.6 million integrated with Auckland Council to address the congestion issues across our city. Those are our challenges, and when we talk about optimism, we also need to have a transport vision for Northcote, but also as a part of the wider Tāmaki Makaurau. That includes a commitment to SkyPath and ensuring that SkyPath gets on and does the thing that we need it to create transport options. And in this instance, it's about walking and cycling over the bridge. This government has invested in SkyPath to $360 million, but not only have they done that, they've budgeted for it, but extended it up to Albany and across to Takapuna so that all of the shore are supported by that particular project. That project also creates jobs within our community, and we want our local people to have first dibs in that. When we need to continue to commit to public transport, and the work that we've done on buses has been incredibly good. 70% of people are taking public transport down the T3 lane, and that's important to acknowledge the progressive steps that have been done throughout that journey. But there's more to do, and we can't get stuck in an Onewa Road discussion. We've got to look at multiple options, which includes walking and cycling. It includes public transport on buses, but it also includes addressing the funding disparities to make our ferries cheaper. And if we know that if ferries are cheaper, then more people will access those, and that will increase the efficiencies of our ferry system across the Waitemata. Secondly, I want to talk about jobs in our local economy, and I agree with Dan that there needs to be a lot of support towards reimagining what Highbury could be, and that we future-proof our retail centres and small businesses locally. I'm incredibly supportive of our hospitality centres, our restaurants and cafes. I've been a champion over the COVID-19 period to support their needs and ensure that they're informed about what support is available throughout the COVID journey. But there's more to do, and again, we need to be optimistic as a community and talk about what we want from a retail centre and hospitality centre in Highbury, and we need somebody to be able to lead that discussion so that we can rebrand accordingly. We start to compete with the work down in Northcote, and I'm very, very proud of this government's investment and work in building houses down in Northcote. We've built our local schools in Northcote College, Onepoto Primary, Northcote Intermediate, up here in Birkenhead Primary, because of the underinvestment in school property and infrastructure that our schools have desperately needed. We're playing catch up in this space. And so should I be elected as our local MP, I'll ensure that we continue to champion all of the infrastructure projects that we're doing. But something that's dear to my heart is higher learning and education. And I think that across Northcote and across our North Shore, we have 2 universities. We don't have any polytechs, wānanga or trades training across our community. Yet we know that 70% of school leavers aren't going into university education. We want our young people to have first dibs at the jobs that are being created by our infrastructure. We need to put in a trades academy into one of our local secondary schools. But we need somebody that's going to champion those particular issues, and we need somebody that's a part of government at the decision-making table and advocating for our local needs as a part of the Greater Auckland. And that's what I'm committed to doing. When I talk about our local jobs, is that our local economy is only good if it works for everyone. And something I'm incredibly passionate about is the commitment to raising the minimum wage. We've gone from $17.80 up to $18.90, and Labour's made a commitment that in 2021 we'll commit to a living wage at just above $20. So those are the sorts of things that matter. If we put more money in the hands of those most vulnerable in our community, they're going to spend it in our local retail and community. Tēnā koutou.
Thank you. Great. Okay, and on to you, please, Tim.
G'day, how are you? Yeah, as a candidate for ACT, we're canvassing for the party vote. Local issues are important for me because I've lived here for over 30 years. So let's look at what's not working. Let's look at keep doing the same things that simply don't work. If we look what happened when we amalgamated Auckland as a super city, Len Brown and subsequently Gough have taken none of those, have moved to economise on any part of that structure. We've now put council-controlled companies into non-transparent dictatorships. I'm not sure whether we need to. If those people who watched Paul Henry's interviews when he came back from the US, we need a whole new view on how we're going to change our future, basically. Working from home, half these business models for public transport are redundant. I see so many buses with no one in them. We need to bring in private enterprise ideas. We need to look at certainly with what Auckland Transport don't do and what they dictatorially give us, like putting that 9:30 out to 10 a.m. on the transit lanes, which is just ridiculous, and that should be changed. It should be a priority. So many tradies tell me they've had to rejig their whole day around starting that half an hour later. So that there's issues like that. Locally, I think, bring in local residents have to be involved. We've got some fantastic Kauri bush reserves there. We've got probably, as an electorate, inner city electorate, we've probably got more bush, and right out to Kauri Point, we've got the Leroy, we've got we've got 2-3 big gullies there. It's a huge amount of recreation, which I particularly enjoy, and I'll be involved. I'm involved to help do anything on the public side, to help the private side, to help that whole scheme. But as a small party candidate, I'm not standing for the electoral vote. I'm standing for the party. We need to bring in some young people. We've got those in our list, and we've got new ideas, and we've got a new focus that we're going to need to pull ourselves out of a recession. Incumbents, we haven't had a recession here since 1988 to 1990 period. And I can tell you, if you want to be green, you can't be green if you are in the red, and we are in the red, big time. So we're going to need some focus on business and the private sector to be involved on public policy matters going forward. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tim. Okay, so that concludes that section. We're now going to get just a 1 minute, very brief closing statement from each of the candidates before we move on to some questions and answers. And thanks again for all those people who emailed through questions earlier, and then also sending some through on the chat. So feel free to add anything else into the chat if you like. Okay, so we'll just have a summary from you, please, Bill.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Here's 3 good reasons to vote for New Conservative. Number 1, New Conservative promotes individual responsibility, encouraging responsibility rather than just focusing on people's rights, because if people are more responsible for what they do, then people are going to self-govern and not require the government to control them. So we would reduce the size and scope of government, which will give us all greater freedom to live happy and productive lives. New Conservative will fully restore the democratic process in New Zealand. And number 2, New Conservative will challenge the currently biased left-wing agenda of the news media and present other sides of the arguments, which are usually the economic costs of things. We talk about COVID and climate change and all these other things, but we don't take into account the economic costs and the knock-on effect. It's not about lives versus the economy, because the economy is actually about lives as well. It's actually a risk balance that you've got to make for everything you do. For instance, we have 350 deaths on the road every year, but we're not going to lock down the roads and say that lives are more important than transport,
Okay.
And finally, New Conservative will promote the traditional family unit and stop supporting or promoting immorality, which
Okay, thanks, Bill. I'm sorry, we really need to keep strict to the, sorry to cut you off, but we do need to stick to the 1 minute. But we'd love to hear from you more in the Q&A shortly. Dan, a closing statement from you, please.
Hi everybody, I asked for your electoral vote and party vote this evening. I've got a proven track record standing up for this community, both in Wellington, but also in local government matters. I work extremely hard for you, and I turn up and listen. I'm not going to turn up just at election time. I do turn up and listen on an ongoing basis. I'm the most experienced major party candidate on the stage in terms of my work experience overseas as an economist in the private sector, but also my policy experience. It's that level of experience that we need in our parliament at this time, given the challenges that we face as a community, but also as a country. So I ask for your electoral vote today, but also for your party vote for National. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Natasha, a closing statement from you, please.
Well, thank you. Just a general comment. I think we all love our environment in New Zealand. It's one of the main reasons a lot of us love living here, want to stay here. And I also believe that we all know humans need housing, education, and healthcare to be active members of society. But unfortunately, previous governments and ourselves as voters have taken these things for granted and neglected them. And now it's become apparent that we need to protect our environment if we want to enjoy it. If we want to swim in the local beaches, we need to regulate and reduce pollutants. If we want people to have homes, we need to make these affordable. In Auckland, the median house price is now 9 times, sorry, the Auckland house price is now 9 times the median income. 30 years ago, it was 3. This is the time to focus on the economy, not in a way that has left us in the dire situation with the disparity growing between rich and poor. I believe the Greens can get us out of this mess, but we need to give them our votes. So party vote Green.
Thank you, Natasha. Shanan, a closing statement from you, please. Sorry, Shanan, you're just on mute there. Could you start again?
Start the timer again.
We'll start the clock again for you.
We've got some challenges ahead as a community as we rebuild post-COVID-19 and our local economy. What I'm committed to is being our local MP, one that helps rebuild a community and an economy with people at the centre. People are the heart of everything that we do. I'm committed to this community. I've demonstrated that over the consecutive 5 years that I've worked here. But I'll champion the things that matter as central government and ensure that our local schools, tertiary education, our primary health care and our retail centres are supported. So I'm asking for your candidate vote for Shanan Halbert and your party vote for Labour. Tēnā koutou.
Kia ora. Thank you. Okay, and Tim, lastly, a closing statement from you, please.
This election is vital to
Oh, you've just knocked on mute there, Tim. We'll start again for you. Oh, still on.
Is that right?
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, this is an absolutely correct. We're at a turning point in this economy and where we're at. So we need a conservative government. Blue tick, gold tick is what I will be doing as a Northcote resident. In 2017, Ms Ardern said there will be no taxes in our next term. Well, we've had regional fuel taxes, we've had high excise taxes, we've had waste, we've had alcohol and tobacco increases, significant increase to road user charges. We've had the five-year bright line. We've ring-fenced. They've continued to slap the landlord with ring-fenced rental losses. We've got a tourist tax in there. We need to stop this, just simply stop, and we need to refocus a whole new agenda on how we're going to move forward. And to do that, we need new ideas, and we need a future-proof aspect. So David Seymour's got the team. We've got our average age in our list is 30, and it's that generation that need to step up.
Thank you, Tim. That's your minute there. Cool. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we're going to go on to the Q&A session. Again, if you wish to send anything through, please enter it into the chat on this forum. Otherwise, I'll hand over to Gillian and Janice, who have been collating some questions that were sent earlier and also the ones today. And then we can get an answer from each of you.
Okay. I'd just like to say one thing before we start. There's been a number of questions about the referendums. Rotary Birkenhead has held 6 different sessions on the referendums, and as it is a conscience vote, it's not a political party vote. We're not going to ask any of those questions, but the people that are standing have seen your question and they can answer that question direct to you in their own time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the first question for our candidates to answer tonight.
Okay, so we've had a lot of questions coming in and we've tried to just pick some common themes rather than target the individual questions. The first question is about their personal involvement and their direct involvement in the Northcote electorate to date, and what have they actually achieved and done at a community level for our electorate.
Okay, great. Who would like to go first there?
Oh.
I'm happy to take the lead on this one, team, if that's okay. How long do I get?
Just 1 minute, unfortunately, so it's fairly concise. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, no problem. Look, as your MP, I get involved in a whole range of community organisations. I believe I'm a member of the Birkenhead Residents Association. I'm also an honorary member of the Rotary Club, but also get a lot involved with a lot of other things as well. In terms of achievements, as a 2-year sitting MP, what's my biggest achievement is probably getting Auckland Transport to invest over $1.82 million to get our Northcote Point Ferry Terminal upgraded. And the second big achievement is actually getting them to do something about Oniwa Road. And they were supposed to trial a clearway, then we went into lockdown. So that's coming your way soon, a trial of a permanent clearway. And to actually get them to trial that is a big achievement, considering they don't even report to the local MP. They actually report to the councillors. So that's my little bit of a snapshot of my involvement in Birkenhead and the achievements as your local MP.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Shannon, sure.
Thank you. As I mentioned, I'm currently the chair of the Birkdale Beach Haven Community Project, which operates the local community houses and a number of initiatives across our community. It's a very, very important organisation. In fact, today actually I was hosting a group of church groups and support groups across our community who delivered food parcels out throughout the COVID period and are still currently doing that. I had the privilege of being able to join them throughout that period. My first introduction into our local schools was developing a leadership program for prefects within secondary schools. So that's the type of work that I've done. On top of that, I've led out the labour movement and an increased labour support group across our Northcote area, and all in a voluntary capacity.
Great, thank you. Anyone else on this topic? Natasha?
Hello. I'm just a new candidate, but personally this year I've just been involved in some rubbish collection in some of the parks, including Smith's Bush and Northcote. I also work on a casual basis with Oranga Tamariki, helping look after foster kids that are based in Northcote, and so I've just been involved helping them kind of adjust to new schools and things in the electorate. But yeah, as a political candidate, I haven't done anything as a new candidate.
Great, thank you. Tim or Bill?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I'm currently living in Okura, but I've lived in Glenfield in the past and also in Beach Haven. Big shout out to Nick Lawrence. Hi, Nick. And I've campaigned in the past a long time ago for Labour, and also the first time the Greens came into existence in 1990, and then I went on and campaigned for the Christian Heritage Party for a couple of elections. That didn't go so well, and then I stayed right out of politics until now. So yeah, I'm back in Northcote because I know Northcote really well, and it's a pleasure.
thank you. Tim, anything from you?
Yep, I've been resident here for a long time. I've had all my boys go through Northcote Primary and intermediate and college. I've got my youngest just starting college this year, so I've been involved in the Fonz and the various school events. I've had all the boys through Takapuna Rugby, and I've had some rallies. I've been involved with a little bit with Northbridge, but just a hard working Kiwi boy and a family man.
Great stuff. Excellent. Okay, another question, please.
Okay, this is to all candidates. You are bound by your party policy. Beyond those matters defined by your party policies, what do you do and how will you individually make a difference in our electorate? Don't all jump in at once. Okay, go.
Shanan?
Shanan.
Kia ora, Janice. Good to see you, and thanks for that question. At the moment, Northcote and all across the North Shore, we don't currently have a Labour MP. Given how close this particular electorate is, and 2 years on from our by-election, it's a very different situation that we're living in currently. What's important in this election is that we elect a local MP that's a part of government, somebody that's committed to central government matters and acquiring resources to help in our rebuild.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, hi Sarah. So look, I think there's a hell of a lot that local MPs can do, even in opposition. And I think one of those is championing small business and local community organisations. And I think as a local MP, it's about making sure that businesses feel like their voice is heard in our parliament, but also in the wider community context, whether it be media and also locally as well. So look, I'm a champion for all of our businesses. The oldest one being Chelsea Sugar Factory down in Birkenhead. It's a fantastic legacy for us, but also a testament to the spirit of private enterprise in our country and also in our community. So I think at this juncture, we need somebody that can champion business and help improve our economy for the future.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Even though I'm just asking you tonight to party vote Green, I think as a candidate for any electorate, being available for your constituents is really important, communicating with them. And really, you're the elected representative, so it's your role to go out there, find out what they need help with, and then do that. So I would, yeah, I think the Greens are really good at that in communication. We've got a great democratic party structure, and I think that we really value that. We are grassroots, and we think communities know best for them.
Great, thank you. Bill or Tim? No? Okay, we can go on to another question then, if you like.
Thank you. So there were a few questions about caring for beneficiaries and highlighting the fact that there are issues with the current benefits not being sufficient for many people. So what are your thoughts about the additional payments that were made to those who lost their jobs under COVID? And what is your party's plan going forward for the newly unemployed while still supporting current beneficiaries?
Question. Anyone? Yep, Natasha, thanks.
Go first for this one. The Green Party, I think, has got a really strong policy. We really advocate for increasing benefit levels because they're really not enough. And I think the COVID payment scheme showed this. The government acknowledged, oh, hold on, all these people have just lost their jobs. They're gonna actually have to survive. How do we do this? And they didn't go, oh, let's just go to the benefit levels. You know, it's more than double. So yes, the Greens are greatly in support of increasing benefit levels to livable levels, because only at that stage, when people aren't worried about how they're going to get their meal or put a roof over their head, can they actually look for jobs. So, yes, thanks.
Thank you.
So Sarah, I'll go there. So look, there's a lot of people who have been made redundant over lockdown and as a result of COVID, and my fiance was one of those. And so I think actually I agree with the government's increase in benefits to support these people at this time. The challenge now is actually how do we create job opportunities for these people to go back to? And I think that that's national strength. All of my colleagues have come from the business world. We know how to improve an economy, to create jobs, to get businesses up and running. So I think that that'll be a key focus for us, of actually making sure that these beneficiaries can springboard into job opportunities, retrain, and get out there and make a better life for themselves and also for their families. Because I think that's what we all want to see in New Zealand, is people living independent, healthy, happy lives, and that's national policy on that.
Great, thank you. Shannon?
I've talked quite openly around the realities that we face in our backyard in the pockets of deprivation and poverty within Northcote and within Birkenhead, Birkdale, Beach Haven. It's important to acknowledge the work that Labor did do in its first term with winter energy payments. We increased benefits, we put in the families package. All of those things count to supporting those that need support and are most vulnerable within our own community. But the group that were supported, the 1.7 million people that were provided with the wage subsidy, was an action to front foot the challenges presented by COVID-19. We didn't want to dive in unemployment. We wanted to ensure that, that small businesses and businesses overall were supported to keep their staff on. But what's also important in that is that we have the right wages in place. And that's why I'm an absolute advocate of ensuring that we continue the work to get to a living wage.
Thank you very much. Bill or Tim, anything from you?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that what the government did in March with the lockdown level 4 was the correct thing to do at the time with what we knew at the time. We were seeing, horrendous videos coming in from places like Italy of people dying and so on. And yes, we needed the wage subsidy then because, I had a whole lot of mates at Air New Zealand that lost their jobs because Air New Zealand shut down, and I don't know if they're ever going to get their jobs back. We've come to a point now where what we understand is that the disease, although it is a deadly disease, is not nearly as deadly as we originally thought. We need to move on from lockdowns. We need to get our small businesses back up and running. We need to accept that eventually we're going to see community spread no matter what. We need to protect the elderly from this disease. We can't just go on locking down the country every time there's an outbreak and borrowing money to pay beneficiaries. It's just not going to work. And if we wait for a vaccine, that could be years away. So the ongoing strategy is not the right one anymore.
Great, thank you. Tim, anything from you? You're still on mute there, Tim. Yep.
How's that?
Perfect.
Good, eh? Hey, we need, the focus is as our tax cuts are doing, going to focus on that middle 60, 70, 80% of working New Zealanders. We need to actually deregulate our, if you go to our website and look at our plan, which we've had out now for about 8 weeks, calling for a much better and more open and transparent COVID management. We need to incorporate a centralised function like Taiwan, where the government is a partner to it, and where we got input from the private sector. We need to be opening up our borders. We need to be doing that smart. We desperately need new ideas and new management. And going back to the wage, I've got a 16-and-a-half-year-old he wants to leave school and start in the job market. Well, he's not going to get employed at $19.80 an hour. He needs to start somewhere and work up. So this draconian legislation of raising the minimum wage is in this environment ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous.
Thank you, Tim. That's your minute there. Awesome. Okay, have we got time for another question there?
Yes. Education. Currently, there's a significant pressure on teachers in the workforce ageing. How will your party work to ensure that education standards remain high and that teachers are recruited in these difficult circumstances? And also another education one that came in was about children with disabilities. What will your party do for children with disabilities within the system, which are at the moment very disadvantaged?
Okay, anyone like to start on that? Sure, Shanan?
Yeah, I'm really happy to talk about education because there's some real needs and disparities across our electorate, particularly with our schools down in, from here down to Beach Haven and Birkdale, both in property, but just to acknowledge that under this government, we have significantly invested in learner support. We've lifted wages of teachers and support staff, which is really important, right from people in the classroom to our administrators to our caretakers. But what's going to count at the end of the day is continual investment to continue a program of work to get our education system up to standard. We had 9 years of underinvestment in health and in education, and we're playing catch up at the moment. With my tertiary experience, and I'm very, very proud of Labour's policy for first year fees free, we have to acknowledge the access issues of people going into tertiary education in the first place. That's what that does, and that means more teachers coming through over consecutive years to fulfil that quality teaching and learning practice that we see amongst our elder teachers.
Cool. Thank you, Shanan. Dan?
Yes, so look, we do have some absolute needs in our electorate, and we had a scenario recently of one school getting $60 million of funding, and the first question that every other school said, well, where was my funding? We are crying out for more classrooms. And yes, I acknowledge that the previous national government needed to lift investment, but also so did the previous Helen Clark government. There have been successive governments that haven't planned for that growth in our city, and as a result, we're playing catch up. So I think first and foremost, we've got to make sure that kids have classrooms to go to when they go to school, and there's needs right across our community there. Janice asked about the special needs kids. We have just announced a policy around $400 million to boost support for children with complex needs. So of course you'll realise that there's always funded kids, but for those who have dyslexia, dyspraxia, mental health issues, there's a whole range of support that's needed there. And we've acknowledged that we actually need to do better on this, and that's why National's fronting up $400 million. And I think a lot of schools will need that in our community going forward.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone else like to answer this education question? Bill?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that we, being a sort of a free market type party, we'd apply the free market model to education. In other words, we would end bulk funding and instead give the money to the parents, so the money would follow the child. So depending on how many children you had, you'd have that money to spend on education at a school of your choice. And that way the parents would then decide what's the best school, and then that would foster healthy competitions between schools to pay the best teachers and provide the best schooling for children in the region.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone else on this education? Natasha?
Hi, I'm used to putting my hand up when we have green meetings. Everyone's just putting their hand up. I went along to the school strike with one of my really good friends, and I think that hopefully as a society, we are now realizing that teachers are such an important role. We give our children to them and expect them to come out, like, educated about so many things, well cared for. And I think for too long, they really haven't been provided for, teachers, and that's why I think we're not attracting teachers. So the Green Party's policy is to improve the pay, job status and job security for all staff in schools, so that remuneration reflects the training undertaken, responsibilities of the roles, and supports career pathways for teachers. So it becomes a more attractive job. People go into jobs often for financial security, and we want to be attracting people who are really educated, really skilled, and want to be able to help. But to do that, we do actually need to pay them the fair pay.
Thank you. Tim, anything from you on this one? Yep, off the mute.
Is that me? I just wanted to make one particular comment, because the continual work around investing in our property is important, and it started in Northcote because of the population growth, but that now needs a champion down in the other end of town. The other point I wanted to mention is under Labour, we will scrap the decile system, just like we did with school donations, just like we did with any NCEA fees. And what that will mean, particularly for our local schools, is that we're not operating on a funding structure that's decile 5, decile 6. What an equity index will do will ensure that the children that are in our relevant classrooms are resourced appropriately, and that particular resource, equity index resource, goes with that child. It will be better for our local schools.
Okay, thank you. Tim, anything from you before we go on to maybe one more question? Do we have time for one more? 2 more. Brilliant.
For money.
Oh, Gillian, are you going to do number?
Sorry,
5?
I thought we were waiting for Tim. Nothing to, have we heard from everyone now? Okay, sorry. So next question, we have heard a bit about it, but it's a very hot topic, and it's transport. And so the questions relate to things like, how are we going to improve ferry crossings, ferry numbers? How are we going to, when are we going to get our ferry harbour crossing? I know one candidate mentioned that already, but the others maybe want a chance to talk about it. And things like T3 lanes and so on. So the question to kind of capture that is, maybe if you could all just share a bit more about your party's vision for transport in Auckland, and particularly as it pertains to Birkenhead.
Who would like to kick this one off? Yeah,
Sure.
Dan?
Yeah, so look, we've announced, National's announced a $32 billion investment into transport in the Upper North Island. And I'm really passionate about this because it's got $300 million for our ferry network in Auckland. And I think actually there's huge potential with our ferry network, but we've got to get increased frequencies. We've got to bring down the cost of ferry usage. We've got to increase things like the number of terminals, parking, make sure that ferries are big enough. So I think that $300 million is going to go a long way towards that. The second aspect is a second harbour crossing. Now, according to the current Auckland Transport Alignment Plan, construction of a second harbour crossing is not due to start till 2038, with some sort of marketing document that NZTA has published now. National's promised to bring that forward to 2028. I'm pushing to make sure we get it started in our second term, which is no later than 2025. And I think that that's needed, a road and rail tunnel underneath the harbour. And I think the week's issues highlights the need to get on and start that project right away.
Thanks, Dan. Anyone else? Shannon?
Thank you. The 2038 date for the harbour crossing was something that Simon Bridges introduced. Under the Jacinda Ardern-led government, she brought that forward to 2028 and funded the ATAC plan with Auckland Council. What I'm committed to, I talked about a transport vision, that there's options for our local people. That includes our local ferries, but the challenge is currently the funding structure doesn't, in the PTOM funding structure, ferries aren't recognised, only buses are, and that's why ferries are more expensive than our buses. That's something that I'll champion as a local MP. But we'll get on and build a harbour crossing, absolutely, and we're already on our way with that. What we'll see within the next month is a business case presented by NZTA on the options that are available for the harbour crossing. In addition to that, which is a very separate project, is the Skypath. We've funded it, we'll ensure it's toll-free, and we've fast-tracked it as a part of the COVID recovery package to get on and do it. And what you see from National at the moment is a $4 to $8 billion hole in their finance plan. Is it going to be transport that the cuts come from? Is it our local health, schools, or is it our housing and health? those are the things that we've got to talk about at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
I have a chance to respond to that, Sarah.
We're trying to keep things to a minimum here, and there's a couple of other people to speak. Anything from Bill and Tim on this?
Give Dan a chance to respond.
Yeah, that's it. That's
Look, I'm trying to keep this as friendly as possible, but I do want to call out that I think what we really need to be clear on here is politicians promise a lot, but don't deliver much, right? So you've got to be really careful when you say, well, we'll deliver SkyPath 3 years ago, but you haven't even started it. So when we say we'll deliver a second harbour crossing, that means shovel in the ground by 2025 or 2026. That means we'll get, I'm sure you are all sick and tired of politicians promising stuff and not delivering. So our promise is that we'll actually deliver and we'll get started on what those important projects are for our community.
I'm still waiting on Ornewa Road and Northcote Ferry. Those are the things that you promised and you haven't delivered on those. What we'll do is we've included in this current budget is SkyPath, and we've funded that. Our numbers add up. We're going to continue and get on with the work that we need to.
Okay, thanks guys. Anyone else on transportation who hasn't had a chance? Bill?
Yeah, Natasha wants to have a go too. I'll just jump in quickly. I'd just like to say that I believe in user pays rather than taxing everybody for it. So for instance, SkyPath, yeah, great if people want to cycle over the bridge, but let's put a toll on it, because $320 million is going to come from everyone, but only if a smaller proportion of the community are actually going to ride bikes. You know, like I said, it discriminates against the elderly and disabled people. Another harbour crossing, great idea, but let's put a toll on it. Ferries, if ferries are a viable proposition, if people really need them, supply and demand, then surely businesses will step up and invest in more ferries if that's what people really need, rather than always dipping into the pocket of the taxpayer to pay for these things. So free market and tolls.
Cool, thanks Bill. And Natasha, from you?
I just wanted to say, I enjoyed listening to Labour and National fight it out and say, well, I think the Greens have actually been championing and pioneering for public transport for so long. And so people are thinking, oh, why hasn't it happened? Why hasn't it happened? It's because these parties haven't prioritised it, and the Green Party does. And we also understand that you can't just do isolated parts that are good, like the SkyPath. You need to also then include good cycleways to and from it, and really look at it in a bigger way. And the Greens have, got that vision. And I think if you support that vision and you actually want it to be progressed, party vote Green.
Okay, great, thank you. Do we have time for one more question? I know we're getting close on time.
Yeah, I've got one, which is like, we have the second largest area of parks and reserves in Auckland. Do you support Kaipatiki pest free? And do you support the national program that was put through last to be pest free as a country by 2050?
Okay, who would like to start off there? And we are really conscious on time, so just 1 minute response each, please. I love the debate, but we need to be concise. Thank you. Who would like to start off? Dan?
Absolutely, Janice. Pest Free Kaipatiki are a fantastic organisation, and something if you haven't gotten involved with, I'd recommend you all do so. It's a great organisation for our community. Look, I think absolutely we've got to support that that vision. National implemented that, of course, in the previous 9 years. We're still committed to that. And that's why things like Pest Free Kaipatiki, we've got to make sure that they're funded appropriately, not just for the pest-free stuff, but also the cowrie dieback, which I'm really passionate about in this area because we've got such big issues with cowrie dieback in our community. So really good initiative, and please get involved in Pest Free Kaipatiki.
Cool, thank you. Anyone else on this one? Shanan?
Yeah, just to acknowledge Janice's question, and absolutely I support Peace Free Kaipātiki. I've engaged with them multiple times in a volunteer capacity, and I love the app that they launched this year. It's a wonderful piece of technology that's available to everyone in our community, and you can get involved in that way too. But there's continuous work to do, and what I've talked about is that we're missing out here in Northcote across the North Shore because we don't have a strong enough voice in government. What we've got to do is to ensure that alongside Auckland Council, that we work with our government to bring resources, expertise and support to our local community. And that's the job of a local MP. Kia ora, Janice.
Anyone else on this, Natasha?
Just like to say, probably not surprising to everyone here, but yes, the Greens support Pest Free New Zealand and any organisation that does that, so that's awesome. We would like to look at phasing out harmful poisons though, so I would like to note that and do support other means of trapping and things.
Great, thank you. Bill?
Yeah, here's a policy we actually agree with the Greens on. We also support getting rid of 1080 poisoning and promoting trapping for pests because we see that as a way of promoting jobs, and it's also safer for people and farm animals. Of course, we're not going to use 1080 poison around Birkenhead, but that's just our general policy. Yes, we definitely want to get rid of pests. Maybe not cats the way Gareth, what's his name, wanted to, but certainly pests like stoats and rats. And I agree with Dan that the carry dieback is a disaster. It's a real shame because Birkenhead's got so many lovely tracks through the bush that are all closed at the moment. So I just hope that the experts can sort that out.
Yep, great. Okay, Tim, anything from you on that one, or all good? You're on the mute there, Tim.
How's that?
Perfect.
I got plenty of young boys who'd be keen to do some trapping. Maybe we should organise a bounty and actually pay these kids $2 or $3 a stoat and see what happens. We might get a few truckloads of them. Effective management.
Nice initiative. Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. Again, we are running a little over time, so if we can just keep it to 1 minute response each, that would be great. Gillian, from you?
So the last question is about immigration and what changes your party or you personally might be looking at in regard to current immigration policies. For example, would you consider standard quotas from all countries, and what other immigration issues might you think are relevant for us? Thank you.
Cool, good question. Who would like to start on the responses there? Shanan?
I've got quite a short response to this one, and in COVID-19, immigration is a very challenging topic, and there's a lot of people that I want to acknowledge that are impacted negatively throughout this period. So a lot of migrant workers that have been with us. My focus as our local MP will be to ensure that we open up to experienced and skilled migrant workers to fill the gaps that we need. I was at one of our local rest homes yesterday, and they needed aged care workers. Now we desperately need to open up immigration when it's safe and healthy enough to post COVID-19, and under Labour we'll get that done. Okay,
thank you. Anyone else on that? Dan?
Yeah, so look, I think we've got the short-term challenges of COVID, and you know, I've got a lot of immigration concerns coming through my office. Businesses that are struggling to keep their staff because their visas are running out, overseas personnel that are struggling to get their visas renewed to come back. So look, the first thing we need to do is start processing those visas again. I think Immigration New Zealand has stopped essentially processing any forms of visas. So that's causing a lot of concern in our community and for our country as well. The second thing, and we'll be announcing our policy, I think, in the next week around this, I think is around speeding up the processing times for visas. And under this government, man, it takes a long time to process visas, and businesses are left out in the cold because it takes a long time to get workers. People who want to come to New Zealand and contribute to our economy can't do so because they can't get their visa processed in time. So I think that's a policy I'm sure we're going to commit to, and I don't want to get ahead of my immigration spokesperson on that.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else on immigration? Natasha?
Thanks. The Greens definitely believe that immigration policy should be impartial regarding countries of origin, ethnicities, culture, age, gender, sexual orientation. We do believe there is a bias in the current system. I actually firsthand, one of my really good friends actually married an El Salvadorian man, and he was not able to even get a work visa here. And he, even though his qualifications, everything else compared to someone else, but that he was from El Salvador was a basic no. And I think that's just racism. That's institutionalized racism in New Zealand. So we definitely would want to change that.
Okay, great, thank you. Bill, yep.
So New Conservative has got a net zero immigration policy until we rebuild our housing stocks and get our house prices down, because we believe that the real reason for the extreme house prices we're seeing at the moment is that the local stock has been exposed to the international market, particularly people coming from China. And people like my son, who's nearly 30, has got no chance of buying a house at the current prices. As I think Natasha said earlier, it's about 7 times the current wage. It used to be about 3 times when I bought a house, and I had a house by the time I was in my mid-20s. What's gone wrong? So we have a zero immigration policy until we can get the house prices down, and then after that we'll go by whatever's best for New Zealand, really. So yeah, we would discriminate. So I'm opposed to what Natasha was saying, based on what's best for New Zealand. Don't see it as racist, just see it as doing what's right for us.
Okay, great. Tim, anything for you on this last question? Just whack that mute there again, Tim.
How's that?
Perfect.
Yeah, I pretty much echo Bill's sentiments there. I'd like to would like to pursue a free trade and free movement between Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. I think that's where we should start, and when it's viable. But we also need to bring in the potential to let the private sector bring in and quarantine and run these systems, as opposed to this closed-in health department that obviously have struggled to organise an efficient and transparent quarantine situation. So the other aspect I think that ACT has on their website here is that new immigrants, we should review this 10-year residency to get the exactly same entitlement that I'll get when I'm 65. If I work 45 years, I think that it's just not economic that you can offer people a full New Zealand pension after 10 years of residency.
Okay, cool. Hey, I think that concludes our evening. I would like to say a huge thank you to our 5 candidates. I'm sure that they would welcome any of your questions anytime over the next couple of weeks leading up to Election Day if you needed to cover anything off. And thank you all to joining in here. It's really great to see so many of you so interested in this topic and actively involved, and what a great forum that we were able to have it on this platform. So thank you, everyone. Good night. Pō Marie.